So, good afternoon. My name is Mike Haugh. I'm Director of Technical Marketing for Glue. And we're going to break our demo up into kind of two segments to show you the operational point of view and then the network engineering or architect point of view, both with Gluware Control and then Gluware Lab. So I'm going to drive Gluware Control in kind of an operational, but I didn't scratch the floor there, in an operational kind of state and give you a sense of what it's like for our end users. The idea of Gluware Control, again, being for operations and for production of the network, is to give you a simplified view of the state and give you centralized policy management. So if there's questions along the way, please ask. But I've been on the show floor talking to people, and as they come up to us, they go, "Do you guys do orchestration or automation?" And as our signs say, and we say, "Yeah, are you struggling with complexity in your network?" They're like, "Yeah, like it's getting out of hand, right? It's getting to the point where a network engineer or an operations engineer can't manage devices with thousands of lines of CLI at this point. The QoS policies, the NAT, the NTP, it's the piling of features that have gone in. And then even if they had control of a certain domain of nodes, they acquire someone or they merge and they have to take on a new vendor. And it's that problem even multiplied further, and they're being asked to make changes rapidly in the network. So here with Gluware Control, we're going to start with a deployed network, and it's a fairly small demo network, but this is Cisco IWAN. Cisco IWAN's feature set is used to deploy like hybrid WAN or SD-WAN, kind of depending on what flavor you're looking for. But from a feature standpoint, it's extremely feature-rich on the routing side. If you configure it from by hand, quite challenging. So as being a hard problem to solve, it's one of the first things we tackled. So when you filter your view by the node type, you have CPE or your customer prem, you have your hub master controllers for your PFR policy, you have your head ends that sit in the data center and connect the branches up to your corporate resources. So what does it look like to manage a CPE? Olivier was talking about the fact that we model individual features and we model nodes. We essentially turn everything into a data model. And so we kind of deconstruct a monolithic iOS config into building blocks of configuration pieces. The nice thing is that when you go to put those things together, you leverage an intelligent orchestration engine, which takes the pain out of it, because you're thinking about, well, what about, if the semantics is different on, one device versus another, or, I have to change the way, if it's the ordering in which I do it, if it's at the interface level or at the global level. The orchestration engine handles those components for you. So let's just take a look at what it takes for a given CPE. And this is, I can see some details of this particular router. What we're managing on it are 19 total features, including connectivity, definition, certificate authority, NHRP, encryption. So all of these building blocks, QoS policy, your IP plan, which is implemented, are built and then applied on the node. And so how you configure them is you select your whatever you're configuring, and I'll just click on like PFR, for example. So again, this is a data model for PFR that Glue has built. Well, in this case, we have a very deep feature set for the IWAN feature. You create an instance, and then when you configure your instance, what operations sees is a drop-down fill-in form fill panel. So they don't have to know the CLI. They don't really have to know all the semantics. They just need to know they have a job to do. So if I get a call in operations and say, I need to add a policy to handle an application, I can come in and say, add a class. Let's say the case was we're having a problem with Office 365 on the network. We need better performance. I can come in and say, this is a class for Office 365. So again, we're exposing the underlying feature set of the device, and we're abstracting the information. So I match on application mode. So it's we have underlying feature set to detect Office 365. I say I want predefined QoS policy, and I want the policy to be low latency data, right? So I want to streamline this application's performance on the network, and I say this is hybrid WAN or SD-WAN, so it's dual homed with an internet circuit, an MPLS circuit. I want to leverage that internet circuit But if my internet circuit falls out of my SLA, let's send it over MPLS, right? So I have the ability to not be an expert in CLI or accessing devices. I get a pretty nice UI that I'm exposed what I need to know to get my job done as an operations engineer. I save the policy, and then I provision. So you create or configure, you save your policy, and then you provision it. And this could be to one or hundreds or thousands of nodes. So now we've saved the policy. You happen to provision PFR on Hub Master Controller. So, sorry, the Hub Master Controller here. And you go into the actions plan, and you provision. So a lot of the power of Glue, because the interface makes it seem fairly simplified, but there's a lot of underlying complexity that's hidden from you. One of the great features of the provisioning engine is I can preview it. Because some people say, I'm very nervous to just hit run and commit. It makes me a little nervous. Preview, if I were to execute it, I can do a connected preview, which means connect to the device, run the discovery engine, examine exactly what's on it, and then compare to what I'm trying to do and tell me exactly the commands that need to be added. I literally can see the CLI we're going to add on that box before I apply it. So that's the power of just, instead of, a guy told me today that he is automating his network with Excel. So it's form fill on Excel, uses some CLI generation, and then it's a load and pray with CLI that is generated from Excel. And I went, oh my God, you need Gluware like instantly. So, but anyway, you can do different modes where you're engaging different parts of the engine. If I do an actual provisioning, I can move over to the log view, and this is kind of where you see the in-depth exchange that happens that we do. And I just open up, we again have historical log views, so let me view the current provisioning log.
So while you're looking at that, one quick question.
Please.
I don't necessarily know where you would use this. I mean, I've got a couple ideas, but can you customize the abstraction and the stuff that happens behind the scenes? So if you've got, you preview all the commands, but let's say a particular thing that just, no, it never, it can't happen, it won't work.
Yeah.
Can you edit the...
So that is a great question.
Override maybe.
The power of the platform is that the components you see populated here, the form fill, are all data models that are all produced by the Gluware lab component. And so everything you see is fully customizable. I can expose a very detailed QoS panel that lets them modify every express forwarding mode and everything, or a checkbox that say QoS enable. So I can abstract as much as I want or expose as much as I want. Every panel is configurable. And that's really important for the enterprise, is that enterprises, Jeff likes to use the term every network is a snowflake. Everyone has unique requirements. So when you apply, vendor A's interface, vendor B's interface, they expose all their features. Enterprises aren't using that. They're using 10% of that feature, 20% of this one, 50% of that one. They want to just see what they need to know. And that's the power of this platform, is that it's fully customizable to the experience that you want to present to operations. So getting back to use cases, that use case is centralized control of complexity of whatever underlying network thing you're trying to solve. In this case, WAN and Cisco IWAN architecture, which is a huge feature set. Again, the design guide is almost 300 pages.
And you're brownfielding IWAN?
Yes.
Right now, there's other options that don't support brownfield for IWAN at all.
Absolutely. So that's another great question. In terms of brownfield, one of the biggest ways to move towards orchestration or automation is moving in small pieces, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're able to do is actually take configuration management of a single feature. Let's just say you're struggling with rolling out QoS policy. I want centralized QoS policy. That's all I want. It's the biggest pain. You can start with just that, where when we talk to the device, we do show commands and do discovery for QoS. When we say, is it in sync with the QoS model, it's just managing that feature. So again, the building blocks of features is, once you're comfortable with centralized policy management of a feature, you start to go, well, I need to do this for anything that keeps getting misconfigured. So DNS, NTP, anything that you just want a central config and push.
So you focused on brownfield clearly with the product.
Yeah.
and then focused on, if I only want to config manage these pieces of it, I can just config manage those. And if the CLI guy wants to do this one thing on the CLI and they're dead set against it, they can do it.
Yep.
So even from a security perspective, if I said, you know what, I just want to use Gluware to manage the security posture of the devices because I need to have that check and balance, you could do that.
Absolutely. The other thing about brownfield is that you have very different device types. You have different iOS versions out there, or OS versions if we're outside of the Cisco realm. And when you move towards some of the newest platforms that vendors are producing for their own orchestration, they want you running the latest box and the latest OS. And if you're one box out of that range, you're kind of out of luck. With ours, we onboard and verify essentially any platform that supports it. So again, just in comparison to Cisco IWAN app, it's very fixed and very rigid for what it does, great for what it does, but it's kind of provisioning for limited topologies and sets. As soon as you want custom, that's why we're a Cisco partner, they offer Glue to say, I need a really custom implementation. And oh, by the way, they also want to orchestrate multi-vendor with some other vendors WAN op and some other vendors switch. Then Glue is just a better fit because we can customize. So it's a positioning thing, but it's about getting started, moving towards automation and evolving. We like to say you kind of evolve to software control, not try to do it overnight or not try to re-architect by mandating an SDN controller or the latest devices. Just to talk to this provisioning engine a little bit, we create a backup, so we create a checkpoint. We can roll back if there's any failure. You get detailed logs of every statement it does. Again, it examines everything on the device before writing, and it only writes the changes required to apply the model. So it's not generating all this config and pushing it. Again, it's only the deltas. Then we have the rollback timer, and then if it fails, it will revert to the previous config, and it'll back out of the change. But I want to get it kind of over to Olivier to show you that the back end of this is that how we customize. I think that's maybe the star of the show. But just to say, it's quite simple to get started, and using this interface is quite easy. And this is for lifecycle management. So provisioning, config changes and updates, like I just changed a config policy, and really any lifecycle management that you're working on. And so what I'll show you here is that the multi-tenancy view is that I was managing my edge routers. I can jump to the Fortinet network and manage my Fortinet for security in my data center. I can click to the Riverbed and manage my WAN optimizers. And so this is where we've gone from being known as a kind of SD-WAN orchestration platform to just being known as a multi-vendor software-defined orchestration platform that we can orchestrate whatever your pain point is. And when they say, well, how long does it take to onboard? And we say, well, we did load balancing in a few days. We did, a really complex firewall in less than a week. So the onboarding process is not painful. And that's key, because when you look at other mechanisms for modeling and orchestrating, like Yang-based systems and NetComp, they're extremely complex. And they're not built for enterprise. They're built for development staffs. It's a huge commitment. So with that, I don't want to take up too much more time on control, just to show you that we make it simple for operations, but the simplicity that you see in the view is actually hiding a lot of complexity of the underlying networking engine and the models that we're using. So
one question before we move on.
Yeah, please.
Beyond the web interface, can we interact with control through an API so that it can be tied into a CD environment?
That is a great question, and Olivia can elaborate. But we're design RESTful. We use full RESTful commands to talk to our platform from this UI that's talking to our server. But maybe.
And do you have is it template based? So like best practices and stuff like QoS and all that?
That's another great question, which is these models like you see here essentially is a template, and I'll click on this just to show you that behind that form, it's a JSON data structure. So this is where you get to start to look behind the scenes to say, well, how is this built? That form fill is completely rendered from a JSON data structure that you have full control over. So while Glue, when we build things, we build based on like Cisco best design practices or a vendor's best design practices, but it's customizable again to fit your need because the underlying data structure is configurable. And one last quick thing to show is that we have been asked, well, how do I get started with just the build out, a very initial provisioning if I was doing it from scratch? And because if you look at something like IWAN, it has kind of this start from scratch. We almost built this just for sales demos because you're never almost doing greenfield, but this is where you could build an overarching framework for your deployment to say, okay, I'm choosing this design. This kind of ties into best practices and designs. You can guide a user using this quick start interface, say I want this data center design, and then create, and then I name it, and then we guide you through the form fill to step through the process. So we look at what you're trying to do and we go, okay, that's 4 steps, or that topology is 8 steps because you need more. So if we
here's a quick question on the way this is happening too. I mean, is your system aware enough to where you have certain commands, and they're very rare, but certain commands where you would have to reboot the device? So like when you adjust the TCAM memory, I think on switches, right? And I can't remember the command off the top of my head, but your system would be able to automate that, wait for the switch to come back up, automate the rest.
Absolutely. And so, you want to say something?
No, I'll let you answer.
So you've got loads of scenarios like that where just landing the CLI is just not sufficient. There's the operations side after you've done this. Typically a trust point enrollment, you just landed the trust point, you need to enroll it. So what do? So when we expose a feature, the feature is usually already pre-baked so that it understands what it takes to do all the declarative stuff, and you don't need to worry about removing all the previous commands. Well, it understands, and I'll show you that in a second. But you have ways, and you have ways to override the rendering, so that in addition to the default rendering, then you can add what is this special extra processing that you need to do. Like, I don't know, okay, I've just landed that CLI, but I need to clear this, I need to reboot that, I need to just, or engage with another node and ping that other node and say, yes, I want to do this, I want to do that first. So yes, you can do that, absolutely.
Does it provide a level of warnings for things that are overly disruptive?
So again, you're the architect.
Yeah.
So if you want to produce a warning and say to the operator, well, I'm not sure, or you don't want to let the operator have access to that very powerful feature, then no. I mean, again, this is modeling. So however you're doing it, if you were behind the wheels and try to do that, this is exactly what what I'm about to show is about capturing that.
So if I wanted to give Taryn the ability to change VLANs on an interface because he's a help desk guy,
yes,
but only my CCI can mess with routing protocols, no,
yes,
no offense, Taryn,
yes,
I could do that.
When did I get demoted, man?
Or only let Amy touch the voice router or something. Hey,
I'm sorry, he said no. You're not going to touch the routing.
So basically, with this, then, I mean, to get back to that, right? You have the full flexibility to shoot yourself in the foot just like you would by hand, which is perfectly fine. I'm just saying you have that. There's no safety net unless you program it in.
Well, that was my question. Is there any safety nets?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he's about to say yes.
Yes.
There are.
And so that's why you have lab, is that you can design the operator's view. So you can take it to the very rich way that we've shown PFR, where we wanted on purpose exposing everything that Cisco PFR can do. Or you can take it to the ridiculously way and say the operator will only have like a off-on button, and that's it. And so we came up with our own modeling language, right? Yang, we love Yang, but Yang is very immature. And so we came up with our own modeling language, which is based on JSON, and we have added our own set of annotations, right? So this is what Mike was showing, is that once the model is exercised and you put data in it, this is why you get this JSON. So to answer your question that you asked earlier about how can I interact it, so the whole config data that is for a policy, for a model, for whatever, is in JSON. And see, it's all REST-based. So if you don't even like control, you can even feed control because you build the JSON somewhere else. You did your secret sauce and try to find all the different items that you needed to get that configuration piece, and you can submit it to control. And it's going to have, of course, to match the model of the JSON has a structure that you're going to have to observe, but that JSON, you can build it, and you don't need necessarily control to build it.
Well, this would be kind of interesting because you could take this, use this product to break down into JSON everything you've got, take that JSON and put it somewhere else, like let's say in Python or whatever you want to do, right? Manipulate it,
absolutely.
use it to control other tools.
So that's the problem of the problem of Yang, the problem of trying to use the existing tool. They are very hard for developers. So what is the first thing that once you've got a Yang model, what do you have to do? You have to compile it. I'm sorry, compiling is not a word. I'm a network engineer. This is not part of my my vocabulary. You have to compile it. Once you compile it, it lands with some code, and you need to choose this language. It's usually rich language. Python will be the lightest, but it could be Java, it could be whatever. But it's a programming language. So once you have it in your code, who's going to help you to exercise the model? Who's going to capture the user interaction? Who's going to put data in the model? It might end up being an array or dictionary in Python, and it's just you need help to put data in it. Okay, let's assume you have something magic and you put the data in it.
Well, no, I need help because I'm a help desk guy.
Well, so now the data is in the model, is in the variables. When we code, who's going to store it? Okay, anyone knows about SQL? I need someone to help me to. So we have taken care of all that. So that I'm going to show you that. Just before, I want to show how we exposed, the way you want to configure an A10, load balancer. So we created only a single feature as an example here. The feature is a server, server load balancing, and what am I deploying here? I'm only like a VIP1. What is a VIP1? Well, VIP1 is, this particular, and you can see how simplified is the form. Again, if you go in the A10 user interface, everyone can guess what is the password for anyone familiar with A10. No laughing, please.
IP too.
Maybe it's not the one you think it is. So when you look at all these different forms, sometimes you just try to edit one form, and this is very rich. If you are the operator that needs to play with a service group or just this these different servers. It is. There's a lot of fields.
Your point being, there's a lot of fields that most of the time we probably don't need.
Well,
Exactly.
but I think the other piece is if you look at a product like A10 or NetScaler or something, right? You have an engineer who's specialized on that product that's going to create the initial config for how we're going to do business, how we're going to deploy applications. And if I have a server guy that needs to just create VIPs, I want the guy who knows what he's doing to create it, and then have an interface to go in and just create VIPs.
Yes.
And
Yes.
not everyone's products let me do that. But I can do that with Glue.
And you know what? The operator, you're going to only give him the enable disable button so he can get whatever real server out of out of the pool.
Right.
And he's not even able to have access to the IP. That's the type of control that you want.
So
and you
it's really
make
like
the life of the operator very easy.
So it's like a giant multi-level access administration platform too.
So look, this is for a service group. This is only I want to be able to add all these different these different servers, and I want to add S1, S3. I want to save. My life is fairly simple. I don't have right now I'm showing you what I can do, and so now that you saw this, I'm going to show you how I'm doing this in lab, and so lab. I'm going to show you our modeling language. So this is what I want the server to be. So you can probably recognize that the different view that you've got here, right? Real IP address, and I can add, all these different ports, like, add, and I can add, TCP, whatever, whatever number. Well, so this is the exact same thing here. Okay? This is the exact same here.
And what am I going to use lab for versus the other web interface?
So lab is to conceive. You're the architect. You're going to use that, and this is how you're going to choose to expose this to the operator. Let's say that they're only going to have access to the real ports. We're only using web servers here. I'm going to only enable 80.443. That's it. I'm not going to even give him the choice to do that. Look, you just say, okay, well, this is only what I'm going to expose to you. That's going to be the real IP address. That's the only thing for the operator that's going to put the server online, specify what's the IP address for it, and that's it.
On a related note, do you guys have like an vision of a community repository place somewhat?
Yes.
For you?
Thank you for your question. So, look, I'm showing you what is a server here, and that's the view. Okay? And so, like I said earlier, we don't produce blocks of CLI. Okay? The engine will do that for you. So again, remember, we're trying to do one line of script equal one line of code. So ideally, what do we want the script to look like? Well, SRV equal new server, and you give it a name, set IP for that server, etc. Like, very, very stripped up, simplified, scripting, and you want the engine to do the rest. So at some point, the engine knows about the CLI and what it takes to write a server. So let me show you.
Yeah, I think some people would find this interface intimidating. It's kind of maybe what you're saying, Amy.
Yeah, a little bit. I was wondering
Yeah.
for some common manipulations, if someone had already done this.
So common manipulation, this is how the operator is doing. But what I want to show you here is that this is why we created the community, is because maybe someone out there is the king of the service groups and virtual servers on A10, for instance, or on Fortinet. And he knows exactly what it takes to write the CLI. He knows all the rules, all that. And he's got ways to capture this once and for all. So when you come along, you know that your config needs a server. You just need to call and say, I want a server. In the model, just like a Lego brick, a brick server. You put it and say, new brick server. And so as soon as you put this in the code, the engine knows what it takes to render CLI for that particular server. And if it's not in the box, it's going to add it. If it's a box, but it's wrong, it's going to fix it. If it's not in the model, if it's in the box, it's going to remove it. Because your model says server 1, for instance, and there's server 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's going to remove all of them and make sure that at the end, you're going to have server 1. So how we do this is that, for instance, the same way that this is our modeling language here that we call Flow, which is JSONs with annotations, right? This is how you model the view here, but I'm going to show you what it takes to model a server on A10. That's it. I mean, we're talking, 10 lines? That's it. This is how it teaches the engine that a server on this particular A10, and remember it could be cross among vendors, here requires a name, a field that I'm going to call RIP for the real IP address, and multiple services, right? Line 8, I can specify a succession. And you're going to see, well, so is it like object-oriented, modeling and programming? Yes. So you're going to say, well, so where do I find all these different methods that help me to manipulate all that? Set name, set RIPs, add service, etc. It's all taken care of by just using this model. And this is what is the dynamic NDK, is that it will understand on the fly. It's going to build that SDK in memory, and it's going to execute this for you. And it knows exactly what it takes because, bound to this, and you just need to focus on this. This is going to disappear. You don't need to worry about this. But this is teaching the engine. This is the syntax and the semantic for a server on A10. So it teaches the engine not only to read what's already in the box, but also how to write. And this is completely transparent for you. So yes, the community, this is why the community will be very helpful, because some experts might contribute to this, and it's already done. And all the Lego bricks are there for you, and you just need to build. You want to build a house, you build a house. You want to build a car, you build a car.
Just to take a small step back, right now, if I want to do kind of rudimentary automation, I can, write a Python script. I can use Paramico. Maybe I'll get lucky and there's going to be a library like Cisco Conf Parse, and I'm essentially doing, screen scraping and things like that on the back end.
Yep.
How does your product interact with devices that don't have, APIs or any kind of programmatic interface? Is it doing something similar?
Yes. So, and maybe I was not very clear, very clear, but basically, what I was showing here, allow you to create that programmable layer. So it doesn't matter what your box, if it's a very old, I'm going to caricature this, an X25 gateway that's been there taking this for like 30 years, it has a two-way interface. Yes. You want to automate it and make it programmable? Yes. This is how you teach the engine how to do that. You describe all the you describe the concept. You want to describe an ACL. What is an ACL? Well, an ACL, this is an object with multiple entries. Okay, what are the entries? Well, an entry's got a source interface, a destination interface, a source IP, a destination IP, ports, and maybe a logging enable disable flag. That's it. And you describe this, like that here in using the structure or flow language. Once you've done that, that's it. You don't need to do anything anymore. The engine knows that it will give you this object to be able to manipulate, this ACL that you just elaborated. And you can say to the engine now, okay, new ACL. I want to add this, I want to add that. Look, I've built the server, the virtual, the service group, the virtual IPs, the virtual server here. So let me show you the code for a feature. And remember, we're trying to do one line of scripting equal one line of CLI. So producing lines to add all these different servers could take a lot of lines. So let me show you the feature.
And just to tie into your question, though, the engine can speak various ways southbound. So there's plugins, and the plugins that are built today are the CLI rendering, CLI modeling engine, or a RESTful API. Wow. And so, but it's extensible. If someone said we really need netconf could be added. So because we have the CLI engine there, when you define your node, you say I want to connect SSH or IPsec, but you define your node and say that the connectivity mechanism is SSH. That's already pre-built in there. You put the IP address and your credentials, and the engine knows how to connect to that device. And so the building block is already there for that connection, and then to begin interacting with that device, through using CLI. I mean, because again, we're tackling the existing network in a lot of cases. So.
Yeah. So what we're doing here is, if I know the structure of the commands that I'm entering, is there the ability to enter commands based upon output from a previous command? Can I?
Yes. So you can do it the old-fashioned way if you wanted to. You know exactly what's the sequencing, what's going to go back, get back to you when you issue this particular or that particular command. Yes, you can do that. Absolutely. If you're trying to use this method, you just need to focus on describing what you want, and you don't need to worry about the interaction of what's coming back to you, because this is captured once and for all. Someone is the king of ACLs, and he knows exactly what it takes to manipulate an ACL. It needs that, it needs to understand that you need to crawl this and crawl that, and maybe some vendors do not allow you to just override an ACL. You need to remove the previous one in order to to submit your change. Look at Fortinet. Fortinet. This is very easy. You can erase, but some do not allow you to do that. Where you need to look at Riverbed and you want to amend a one-up rule. Well, as soon as it is in your policy, you cannot just rewrite it. You need to just use the edit keyword in order to modify it. So you don't need to worry about that anymore, because you just need to say, this is the rule that I want. And it doesn't matter what it takes. The engine has already the knowledge on what it takes to just basically take that statement that you want, this one-up rule, and lend it to the box.
So Olivier, with about roughly 5 minutes,
yes,
maybe we'll show them how we integrate this environment where, again, you can make an engineer into a programmer by doing some lightweight, a little bit of JSON, a little bit of JavaScript, and you can automate networks. But you take this environment, but then you want to push it to production, right? You want the DevOps model where engineer expose a feature for me or hide a feature and push it to production. So one of the new things that we released and announced at the show, along with community, is this, the distribution center is now tying your development environment to your production environment. So as he makes a change here, he can go and decide to publish. So publish to production.
And so this is, as soon as you publish, something, something here, and here I've got 11. If you go into my, my control engine here, I've got all the different packages that's been, produced for me, and I can add, right? So here you can entertain, like a community could just like create all these different models for CLI and all that, and it's not a feature. It's only how to teach the engine all these different network concepts, and then you can have other packages that are features. Server load balancing for Fortinet. server load balancing for A10, firewalling on Fortinet, IWAN for Cisco, and once you have the package, then you can install that package and say, okay, this is the package I want. And once the package is absorbed, and it's validating every single thing that you're doing, if you have all the references there that you're not doing anything wrong, and okay, I'm done. So I can start using it straight away. It's there. If you've got new features and new concepts appearing here, then yes, they will appear here.
Olivier, what happens after I've pushed my configuration in and something gets changed in the back end? Am I alerted to the fact that I'm out of compliance with the model I originally pushed?
So you can be alerted. We have developed some extensions for some vendors, not all of them, because not all the vendors are capable of sending alerts. But for instance, for Cisco, this is what we've done: is that if anyone gets into use PuTTY and is not even using the standard tools to make an unauthorized change, the engine will be notified, and you can do whatever you want. Then you can try to reapply the model, and the engine will be able to mitigate the change. Or you can want to investigate and try to see, what's been done. Is it like an improvement? Is it, it's not supposed to? A typical one would be a .1x, right? How many engineers are sent, on the field just try to fix a problem. The whole switch is protected with .1x. You use the backdoor to just, I'm going to remove .1x so I can join the network, fix the problem, and they go away. They forget to remove, the .1x. They've removed it and they forgot to put it back. So this is where modeling is extremely important, because the engine will know, well, this switch is, this particular port doesn't have .1x where the model says it should have.
So is it going out and pulling configuration and doing a comparison, or is it using? It's
not a comparison. Yes, it's not a comparison. It's basically, again, it's comparing the model with the configuration. So the model, it knows how to translate this into the CLI, and then there's the CLI that is already in the box. And so, in addition to, it's not just comparing, it's not like a dull compare, because again, it's got the semantic understanding. So it will know that this particular line, if this particular line is not supposed to be there, it knows that it has to crawl the structure to get there to issue the no command. Just a basic, a comparison will not give you that. It will just tell you that these lines differ, but it will let you know that this particular line, you need to crawl 2 sub-levels in order to get to it, in order to remove it or add it or alter it.
So is it doing some kind of ongoing configuration validation? Like how does it know that it's a?
You could imagine that with such a tool, because it's all based on your model. I mean, if you want to run this every 24 hours at midnight, that it will be able to just put your network on autopilot, and if there's any change that's been done during the night, well, it will just, remove them.
So with about a minute and a half left, I don't know if you could have the last slide to switch over to, but what we wanted to close with is that what I first started showing you in control was the IWAN feature set. Again, we modeled over 130 iOS features to build that out, so we built it deep. What we've done with the 12 other platforms we just added, we added the vendor plugin, if you will, and some of the feature set. The idea is to seed it with basic features and then allow our community to build features as they need it. So really to make it extensible. So we announced community.gluenetworks.com. We've had over 100 people sign up here at the show. Engineers are very interested in doing a little lightweight edits of JSON and JavaScript to get very powerful automation. So they're willing to do that. They don't want to become full-blown Python programmers. But the idea here is that we build out the community, and through the community, like you're saying, you can get pre-built models where you're not starting from scratch. But Glue doesn't want to kind of be in the way to develop all the features for you. We've opened up our development environment called Gluware Lab. What Olivier was showing you is it's actually pretty easy to start small by just customizing a feature, what you're exposing. Get a little bit deeper by maybe augmenting a feature. Getting a little deeper by creating a feature. And the last realm is actually onboarding a new vendor. And we're doing that for you. So that piece you don't really have to worry about. And so we've been, with the development our team has done, we're onboarding vendor in days to weeks, very complex interactions. And so we take care of that tough modeling in the orchestration engine, and then we just give you the building blocks to then add and customize features.